India has always been a land of diverse philosophical and spiritual traditions, a melting pot of ideas and beliefs that have shaped its culture and history. From the ancient Vedas, which laid the foundation of Hindu thought, to the profound teachings of Buddhism and Jainism that offered new paths to spiritual enlightenment, the subcontinent has witnessed a rich tapestry of thought, each thread contributing to the complex and vibrant intellectual heritage of India. Yet, amidst these diverse schools of thought, one stands out for its bold rejection of the supernatural and its unwavering emphasis on the material world, challenging the very essence of spiritual and religious doctrines. This is the Charvaka school of thought, often referred to as Indian materialism or Lokayata, a philosophy that dared to defy the norms and question the unquestionable. Charvaka dared to question the very foundations of traditional Indian thought, advocating for a worldview grounded in empirical evidence and sensory experience. They challenged the authority of the Vedas, the sacred texts that were considered the ultimate source of knowledge and truth, denied the existence of the soul and the afterlife, concepts that were central to most Indian philosophies, and advocated for a life lived in pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, emphasizing the importance of tangible, earthly experiences over spiritual aspirations. In a world dominated by spiritual beliefs, the Charvakas stood out as the original skeptics, demanding evidence and reason above blind faith and promoting a rational approach to understanding the world. Their philosophy, though often dismissed or ignored by mainstream thought, offers a refreshing perspective on life, emphasizing the importance of the here and now, and encouraging individuals to seek happiness in the present moment. This essay explores the core tenets of Charvaka philosophy, its historical context, and the reasons behind its controversial stance, and its surprising relevance in our modern world, where the quest for evidence-based knowledge and a focus on material well-being continue to resonate. Join us as we delve into the fascinating world of Indian materialism and discover the enduring legacy of this ancient school of thought, a legacy that challenges us to rethink our own beliefs and values in the light of reason and empirical evidence. The exact origins of Charvaka philosophy are shrouded in mystery, much like many other ancient philosophies that have been passed down through the ages. Like many ancient Indian schools of thought, its teachings were primarily transmitted orally, leaving behind a fragmented and often contradictory historical record. This oral tradition means that much of what we know about Charvaka comes from secondary sources, often written by its critics. Scholars believe that Charvaka likely emerged sometime between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE, during a period of significant intellectual and social upheaval in India. This was a time when various philosophical schools were vying for prominence, each offering different perspectives on life, knowledge, and the universe. This era witnessed the rise of new religions, philosophies, and social orders, challenging the existing Vedic traditions. The Vedic traditions, which had dominated Indian thought for centuries, were now being questioned and re-evaluated. The Charvakas, with their radical ideas, were very much a product of this era of change and questioning. They stood out for their bold rejection of established norms and their emphasis on a materialistic worldview. They rejected the authority of the Vedas, which they saw as collections of hymns and rituals that offered no real knowledge or liberation. To the Charvakas, the Vedas were merely tools used by priests to maintain their power and control over society. Instead of relying on scriptures or divine revelation, the Charvakas emphasized direct observation and sensory experience as the only reliable sources of knowledge. They believed that what we can see, hear, touch, and experience directly is the only truth we can be certain of. This emphasis on empiricism placed them in direct opposition to the prevailing philosophical schools of the time, which often relied on abstract reasoning and metaphysical speculation. The Charvakas argued that such speculations were baseless and did not contribute to human well-being. While the exact founder of Charvaka remains unknown, The name itself is attributed to a sage named Charvaka, considered the primary proponent of this materialistic philosophy. Some legends suggest that Charvaka was a charismatic teacher who attracted many followers with his straightforward and practical approach to life. Some scholars believe that Charvaka might have been a composite figure representing a lineage of thinkers who contributed to the development of this school of thought. This lineage likely included many individuals who shared similar views and helped to refine and propagate the Charvaka philosophy over time. At the heart of Charvaka philosophy lies a fundamental belief in materialism. The Charvakas argued that the only reality is the material world, the world we can perceive through our senses. They rejected the existence of anything beyond the material realm, including the soul, God, and the afterlife. For the Charvakas, the universe was not created by a divine being, but arose from the interaction of fundamental material elements. They believed that consciousness itself was a product of material processes, arising from the complex organization of matter in living beings. Death, to them, was not a transition to another realm, but simply the cessation of consciousness and the disintegration of the physical body. This materialistic view had profound implications for how the Charvakas approached life and death. Since there was no afterlife to strive for or fear, they argued that the focus of human life should be on maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain in the here and now. This emphasis on sensory experience and the material world led the Charvakas to develop a hedonistic philosophy. They believed that pleasure was the ultimate good and pain the ultimate evil. However, they were not advocating for a life of mindless indulgence. Section 4. No ghosts, no gods, rejecting the soul and afterlife. The Charvakas boldly challenged one of the most deeply held beliefs in Indian philosophy, the existence of the soul or Atman. This was a radical departure from the mainstream thought of the time, which held the soul as an eternal, unchanging essence that defined one's true self. They argued that there was no evidence to support the notion of an immaterial, eternal entity that transmigrated from one body to another after death. To the Charvakas, such beliefs were mere conjectures without empirical proof, and they emphasized the importance of direct perception and tangible evidence. This rejection of the soul set them apart from most other Indian philosophical schools. While others posited complex metaphysical systems to explain the soul's journey, the Charvakas remained steadfast in their materialistic outlook. They argued that our thoughts, emotions, and consciousness were simply functions of the physical body and ceased to exist after death. To them, the brain and the body were the sole sources of our mental experiences, and once the body perished, so did the mind. Just as a chariot cannot function without its various parts working together, consciousness arose from the complex interplay of physical elements within the body. This analogy underscored their belief that consciousness was not a separate entity, but a product of physical processes. This materialistic view of consciousness led the Charvakas to dismiss the concept of karma and reincarnation. They saw these ideas as unfounded and argued that they were used to control and manipulate people. They saw no logical reason to believe that actions performed in one life would have consequences in a supposed next life, as there was no soul to carry over these karmic imprints. For the Charvakas, the idea of karma was a social construct rather than a cosmic law. By rejecting the soul and afterlife, the Charvakas challenged the authority of religious rituals and practices that were based on the promise of rewards in the next life or liberation from the cycle of rebirth. They believed that such promises were often used to exploit people's fears and hopes. They argued that these practices were often exploitative and distracted people from living a fulfilling life in the present. Instead of focusing on an uncertain afterlife, the Charvakas encouraged individuals to seek happiness and fulfillment in their current existence, emphasizing the importance of tangible, present experiences over speculative future rewards. Section 5. Trust your eyes. Charvakas' Epistemology. The Charvakas were known for their skeptical approach to knowledge, particularly when it came to metaphysical claims. They believed that true knowledge could only be obtained through direct perception and sensory experience. This emphasis on empiricism formed the cornerstone of their epistemology. They argued that inference, a key method of knowledge acquisition in many Indian philosophies, was often unreliable and could lead to false conclusions. They pointed out that inferences were based on assumptions and could be easily influenced by biases and preconceived notions. Similarly, the Charvakas were critical of relying on testimony, particularly religious scriptures or the words of spiritual authorities. They argued that these sources were often unreliable, contradictory, and could not be verified through direct experience. Their emphasis on sensory perception led them to adopt a form of skepticism known as materialistic monism. They believed that the only reality was the material world, and anything that could not be perceived through the senses was considered either non-existent or beyond the scope of human understanding.